On the Fly podcast, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Man, I'm super excited about tonight. I know I say that every podcast, but like this one's just a little bit different because this one hits home for me. Why? Because this guest that we got on tonight, man, I think you can already hear him
This
laughing.
guy.
Let me just give a high level overview before we kind of talk about our weeks and kind of our highs and lows. So really quick, guys, for our listeners out there, this man is a really special man because we met over a year ago, which is crazy to think about. Almost yeah, over a year ago. It was 2021 summer, and it's very interesting because when I met this super special guest, we met initially, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. The rooftop of some hotel apartment that was a couple of us interns were at because we were interning over at Boston Scientific, a medical device company, over the summer. And there's two groups of Uno going on, and I was managing my Uno group. You were here. I was like the dog at my Uno group, and this guy, this amazing guest, he was the dog at the other Uno group. And I just like, hold on a second, there can't be two dogs in this one space. So I knew I handled my Uno group. I'm like, hey guys, let me go check over this group. What's going on, right? And the kind of guy that I am, and Tyrone knows I'm this kind of guy, and probably Niko knows this too. When I notice that there's another bull in this space, when there's another dog who's just like me, I stay quiet because I want to figure out, okay, who's this guy? Who, like, again, there's only space for one kind of guy like this. And I just realized, man, we have similar energy. We talk at the same speed. He's super smart. I need to know this guy, right? So again, this really super special guest, his name is Niko Simpkins. Awesome man. He's a man who's just making plays on plays. We like to talk about how he's playing chess. Everybody's playing checkers. This man's playing chess, right? Tyrone knows that because he's also a
Guy.
chess player. Niko Simpkins is the kind of guy that I look up to because just the way that he speaks, his conviction, the way that he talks about his goals, the way that he executes on his goals. I absolutely love this super special guest. Again, we got Niko Simpkins in the house today. Niko, how you doing?
And you gonna butter me up anymore? I gotta watch my. I'm trying to eat better. You throwing all this butter on the biscuit, man. It's crazy. Hey, I'm
Golly.
feeling great after an intro like that. I feel amazing, man. I feel stellar. I appreciate it. I guess say many words about this guy too, but you all already know this guy's built different with the PH, as we like
With
to
the
say.
PH.
PH, man.
Man, I
Yeesh.
appreciate you.
I'm
I
good though.
appreciate
I'm
you.
good. Happy to be here. And see my boy Tyrone too. Mr. Great Energy, man. You already know. You
God bless,
already
man.
Man,
Good to
know.
see you, man. Good to see
I
you.
love
You
to
left
hear.
an
I love to
impression at
hear.
National Convention, man. Absolutely.
Likewise. Man had the leather shoes and the leather paper holders, leather wallet, man.
Come on
You
now.
know,
Come
Come
on
on,
now.
leather folder
I
with
love
it. I
it.
was like, okay, heard you for sure.
I love it. I love it. No, I
Captain
appreciate you
Crispy.
guys. You know, 100%, 100%. Man, how are you guys doing though, Tyrone? I know you and our school just ended a little over a week ago. What you been doing for winter break? What you been tapping into?
Absolutely, man. Typically, coming from a very, very busy semester, it feels good to finally just sleep in my own bed for once and actually relax. Set the alarm to 9 a.m. as opposed to 6. So I've been doing a lot of resting. And in that midst, I've also been doing a lot of working as well. A lot of developmental stuff
Mm,
going on behind the scenes that I'm looking to apply for the upcoming spring semester. So pretty much just
yeah.
recouping, get my priorities back in line, and getting ready to come out strong. I moved back January 4th actually for RA training,
Okay.
so right around the corner,
Gotcha.
man. So short
Yeah.
lived, but well
Man.
deserved.
That's awesome. No, I love to hear. I know you're putting in that work. And again, we talk about consistency all the time. When I think of Tyrone, I think of consistency. Again, that was the theme of this last semester. So I'm very much looking forward to see that growth into the spring semester, man. I love it. I love
Hmm.
it. In terms of Niko, my guy. So what you graduated? Was it spring this early year?
Yep. Spring
Man,
2022.
Man, again,
Out of here.
Congrats,
congratulations on
congrats.
that.
Thank you so
We're
much.
going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm super excited. But in terms of what you've been tapping into in this season, again, this winter, in terms of it about to be 2023, what you've been up to, what you've been tapping into, again, what you can talk about, what you've been up to, what you've been tapping into.
Right. So we had the awesome opportunity to work on the venture with some of my boys from Penn, which has been a great experience. And just really, taking that time to chase ideas, taking time. It's almost like, to me, it feels almost like a gap year, but like it's a productive gap year. And I never thought of the value of gaps because it's like, yo, just go straight up and grind out the thing, get it done, whatever. But I think
Hmm.
there's something magical about having that time to like really sit down and reflect and like work on something independent of like people telling you how to set goals, like kind of setting your own goals, whether they're like Tyrone said, his personal, which we already know how Tyrone gets, man. PH, man, different.
Different,
So it's
100%.
like, but for some of us who are earlier on our different journeys, you know what I'm saying? We're practicing setting our own goals as opposed to having them prepackaged for you, like the Lunchable way.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I love it. Like the lunchable. I love that. I love it. No, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that, man. I know there's gonna be so many things that come out of all three of us in 2023, and it comes into locking into this season and blossoming in 2023 in the new year. So yeah, man. I mean, for me, just again similar to Tyrone, just ended up the last fall semester, kind of been grinding and taking this time for the winter break that I've always complained that I didn't have because classes and whatnot, to focus on the business, focus on FLI, kind of tap into other areas that I didn't necessarily have that kind of time to tap into before, and doing a lot to really just help and be a utilitarian. I think that's something I very much realized. Like, I'm a guy who likes to focus on, that self-development, which again, we'll tap into later with what Niko's going to be trying to do, but also as well, I love to give back. And again, as we all love to do, but I very much like to focus on giving my strength. That's exactly why we do this, and why I like doing this with FLI, because one of my strengths is really understanding finance, right? And I want to give back. I want to give back to Niko. I want to give back to Tyrone. I want to give back to other people, right? And that's one of the programs that we have with the financial accountability coaching. I just realized I literally just sacrificed, not this no, it was this last weekend. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tyrone knows I sacrificed from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. back to, like, literally 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. back to 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 back, infinity back to back, 30-minute meetings, just consultation, talking with guys, explaining, what we want to give value in Financial Literacy Institute. But also, I just have the passion. I like to tell people, I just literally love to have the passion. I want to give back, like literally utilize me, for lack of a better word, like not necessarily abuse my time, but like use me. I want to be utilitarian. I want to help in this space, right? So I love that. I know we're all guys who are going to be taking off in 2023, and I'm excited to kind of see where we blossom into, like even just 10 years down the line. Tyron and I talk about this all the time. Like, there's going to be some point in our future where we're going to look back at this and be like, wow, like we really put in that work, and now we're seeing the fruits of our labor. Like, we don't see it now. It's a long game. I think a lot of people say it's kind of like a exponential chart, right? Kind of starts like this. It's like nothing, dirt, grind. And then whoa, it's like, holy, but it had to start with this, right? So man, I'm excited, and these are just three bulls. Just all three of us, we're going to be taking off. So I'm super excited. But in terms of the first place to start, right? So let's go back in time, Niko. Again, you already kind of alluded that you attended UPenn, right? Ivy League school, very high up there in terms of prestige and whatnot. When people hear, man, Niko, you went to Ivy League school? Tell me about your story, right? That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to talk about, right? Niko, to kind of bring us back in time, bring us back in time. Even let's go to high school. Who was Niko? Because I don't even know if you and I had this conversation. Who was Niko Simpkins in high school? And then what was that? Maybe there was a change. Maybe there wasn't. Whatever that means to you. Who was Niko Simpkins in high school? And then how did he get to Ivy League? Kind of talk about that if you can.
All right.
Man, where do I start?
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm gonna take I feel like high school was kind of more like I feel like it was more like a autopilot type thing. I think, I could talk about that or whatever, but I think what would be more interesting is like pre-high school. Like, I think
let's talk about it.
I want to talk about, I'll start there because I think that tells
that.
more than, I think high school, the ball is already kind of rolling in a direction. And there's major things that are going to happen that like affect that. But I always, like, similar to you're out here dedicating because of the passion. You're dedicating because of, you're trying to drive change. You're trying to really, start round up and build something. So I think that's where I'm gonna start as well. All started when I was 3 years old. Nah, I'm playing. I'm not gonna start.
This guy.
Right. No. Realistically though, I'm gonna skip the timeline part and more specifically say, in order to understand me in high school, which is like, I'll tell you, end result high school, like applying to college and stuff. Like, I was taking pretty cool classes, taking pretty like intense, the harder classes that my school offered. I was playing sports. I was doing pretty well in that. I was playing instruments. I did a couple different things. So it was like, okay, I was trying to, versify. And I think telling the story of how I got there is more important to why I even ended up doing these different things. I was trying out my own stuff. That's when I got into music, started, doing the whole artist management, entrepreneurship, working with different artists, stuff like that. And was getting a little traction there. So that was kind of what I was doing at that point when I was thinking about applying to Penn. I was playing basketball up until then, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. Overuse issues with my knees made me consider some other stuff. Started playing like around music, producing, managing, stuff like that, and then had some success with that. And that's what made me realize, I have skills that go beyond basketball that are worth exploring. And so from there, that's when I was like, last second, I was like, let me go ahead and apply to. I moved the wrong way because this thing is mirrored. It messed me up. But I was like, let me go ahead and try my hand at applying to Penn and see what happens, because my sister had applied to a very like rigorous school as well. So I was like, oh, she gets into a school like this. I was like, it opened up a ceiling of possibility for me, and I think that's part of this what I want to go back to as well. So those are all the outcomes. A lot of cool stuff, a lot of this, a lot of that, whatever. But rewinding back, I think, independent of time, one of the funniest things I told people in life, because literally, like you said, like Penn is known for whatever, like Penn engineering, whatever. It's supposed to be smart, do all the engineering stuff, whatever. All the things I did in my life that I was like good at the end of high school or known for it in high school, I used to literally be the worst person that I knew at those things. Like music, everybody who starts off at music, when they start, nobody starts off like Beyonce. Everybody's trash, especially when you start like producing music. It's like, even if you have good taste, it's like your mixes are trash. You're mixing on Apple headphones, whatever. Music, start off your buns. Academics, not everybody starts out trash at academics. My sister, all A's, straight savage, bro. Harvard bound from the womb, literally. Me, they picked her for like gifted programs. They were not checking for me for any gifted programs, bro. None. They were not trying to hear that. Additionally, basketball, right? Like at the end of basketball, I ended up being all state, and we played against we played against a lot of people who are in the NBA now. Like all state, I was up there playing against Darius Garland, who's like still playing NBA right now. So it's like, and previously, like when I started playing basketball, didn't grow into my body, was super, uncoordinated, whatever. Earlier on when I was younger, it was like I was a dude who might not even get off the bench when I go to tournaments, and that's going to affect you because you see in the coach don't even want to put you in, whatever. So you go from that to leading teams that are, and we won the national championship, my summer team, my select team. So it's like you go from that to seeing those other things. You're a wide world of sports playing on ESPN3, this, that, the other. It's like, okay, cool. So I say that to say that a lot of who I am isn't seen in my high school experience. I feel like that's not, it's not visible in that because there's so much other white noise. And I feel like me getting those other things that, like achievements and stuff that ended up getting me opportunities, wasn't based on really who I am, but it was more based on a realization that I had of how the game works and being like, okay, I can figuring certain things out along the way and then kind of changing how I output who I am. But based on your question, right? Like talk me through who you are, whatever. Best way to describe me at core, which wasn't seen in high school, was seen before that, is like my teacher said, which is why I want to start before high school. I think one of my teachers, who was a physics teacher in eighth grade physics teacher, he said this the best to my parents. My mom loves this quote, and I didn't think of how insightful this was till you literally asked me this question. And he was kind of one of the major reasons that I ended up pursuing engineering and really enjoying science. He said to my parents when she was they were talking about like classes, like parent teacher meetings, whatever. She was like how's he doing in class, whatever, blah blah. And then they go through all that, and at the end he finishes up with, Niko isn't going to be the top student or the student with the best grade. That's not going to be him. But he is without a doubt my best student. And so there was something about, and for context of like, why would he say something like that, right? So for example, like it's true, I'm not about to score the craziest grade on any test I've almost ever taken for real. But in that class, it was a robotics class, right? So we used the little Lego NXT blocks to like build little circuits and stuff like that. And I would spend time outside of class with the little time I had because I was trying to play up and like practice with the basketball team that was high schoolers. So it required me leaving a certain time, trying to do all these different things. And in between, in the mornings and in between when I went to basketball, I asked my teacher, because I really enjoyed the robotics stuff we were learning. I asked him if I could go in there and work on an extra NXT brick on my own project. And so throughout the year, I would go in there and dedicate time. And I created this. Because I enjoyed what I was doing, and I was like, we're doing some real bait. I want to get even more. Like I want to push. How far can I push this stuff? So I was like, I ended up making. We were just making like sumo bots at the time, and then I came in on my own. I wanted to make like a joystick controlled crane that had like multiple different ways that it could turn and different arms and stuff like that. And so I spent that semester really working on that piece by piece, and I succeeded in that. And the thing is, it was like way more complex than anybody in my class had created. However, and I learned a lot from it. I grew a lot as a person. It teaches you like long-term like diligence of like, you're not just about to do some crazy thing overnight. Like keep coming in, working, refining, figuring out, troubleshooting, all these different lessons I learned from it that enhance my ability to build stuff in the class and in the future, and like the practice of fostering that passion for what you do. But the thing is about schools and institutions, stuff like that, none of that is going on the rubric. That's a type of learning that is not, you can't fit that into a rubric. And so that genuine curiosity and trying to really challenge yourself and do something impactful, like that's not really what goes in the rubrics. So that's, I feel like that person, that mindset is a lot of who I am and how I ended up and underlies all my decisions and how things went from the high school level to college level, whatever, was really saying, you know, even in basketball, like my thing was I wasn't playing to try to be the dude who scores the most points, the dude who does this, the dude who does that. I was playing for respect, and not really respect from anybody else, but respect for myself first, knowing that I set that bar for myself higher than anybody else could possibly set it. Like if I'm getting respect for myself, each time I should be shocking everybody else because the way that I set the bar in my own head for how I want to perform to myself. When I sat down to the crane, I was like, you know, this is like nobody's expecting you to go in and do something. Like this is what I set for my. I see opportunity to do this. I owe it to myself to go get that at that level or go push that a little bit farther. So I feel like that piece is what ended up resulting in all the other stuff. And I think that's at the core. But comes a point where it's like you got to play a game of doing the stuff that's rubric based. But I feel like a lot of my mindset was never like, let me sit down and, you know, check this box, because it was like, I saw how it's so easily gamifiable. Like it's so easily gamifiable. It's like, what type of challenge can I really, what really versus the things that I enjoyed were the things that push me to think or push me to be like, get something done or challenge my ability to execute a vision that I had in my head. So I think that was a lot of how I was before the college experience, and then played in high school, I guess.
Right. And I like that theme of the rubric. Yeah. That rubric theme right there. It's like the kind of guy I know that you are. Like you're not only going to check these boxes like, oh, this is trivial, but now you're doing things that people aren't even thinking that are even possible to do, right? And all while having fun doing so. That's why you made the claim of gamifiable. I talk about that all the time with financiers, being able to, you know, master your personal finance and make it fun at the same time. I absolutely love those two things you brought up. The rubric theme, that again, by no means do you stick within the rubric. You're not only checking that off, but you're also, man, I'm doing things I didn't even think of that's going to be in the rubric. But also as well, I'm having fun. I'm doing something that I want to do. I'm able to respect my decision, whatever I, you know, want to kind of come up with. And I love that because the kind of guy that I know you are, that makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, so, I think one of the things that was really important that I kind of took away from that, he was literally competing with himself. Like it was literally me versus me.
Right.
So when he's coming to class, you know, afterwards and figuring out how to do all this extra stuff and earning respect for himself, he's not worried about anybody else. He's literally focused on himself. Like I think that's very important that people don't really understand is when you tune out all that extra noise and you focus on being the best you and competing against yourself, all that other stuff, it only takes time. It only takes time, literally.
Here today and gone tomorrow. You know that audio they say, here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's real.
I agree.
And you know, again, from how I know you, Niko, you are a man who's just doing so many different things, right? So I probably asked you this question a while back, but I want to bring it back up in terms of, again, for a lot of our listeners, they're probably spreading themselves thin. I know I have done so. I know Tyrone has done so, right? So how does someone like you, how are you able to manage all these things that you're doing, right? Kind of really my question is, for a busy guy like you, like how do you structure your days? Do you have a certain type of way you structure your time? Do you have like how do you do all these things that you do? Which we haven't talked about all of them, respectfully. But then how the kind of guy that I know Niko is, does a busy man like you structure your kind of day? How do you structure your time?
Right. So I would like to preface this answer before I give my answer and say that like,
go ahead.
One of the things I learned, I was studying design for a minute, which is a whole nother story. I was about to do this master's. And then I felt like, anyway, I can skip that. Long story short, I did like some of the design principles that I learned in there. And one of them was, actually, no, I didn't even learn from the class. Scratch that. This is just something I learned in life. My fault.
Okay.
I was thinking about it. No, it's something I learned in life. The more
this is about to be good. That's how you know it's about to be good.
No, the more that you spread something thin, the more that you spread it out, the more highly general a solution is, the less effective that solution is going to be. So for example, if I go in and I'm thrifting, right, and I pick some jeans, and those jeans, let's say, or fast fashion, H&M, right? H&M makes, I don't know if the word is generalizable, but they make like very generally applicable clothes, which means that
Mm-hmm.
when it fits on your body, it's not going to fit the exact way, whatever, but it's at the
Right.
compromise of effectiveness because you're getting the price or whatever. Versus if you want the most effective pair of jeans you could buy, those jeans are going to be one of one because they're going to be tailored to your body. So I like to preface my answer by saying that I think that right there is the sauce to like a lot of this stuff. And there's some people who like I know a guy, for example, one of the smartest dudes I ever met, who went to he was in engineering with me at Penn, and he did like a Wharton degree as well. Dude's just completely different. He's at SpaceX right now. Bull is so different. And like he's the type of person where he's one of those traditional like time blocked people. Like everything
Right.
is time blocked. Like he time blocks even social stuff is time blocked. Versus for me, it was so back to the what I was saying. For me, it was figuring out what way I think in order to reach your best performance, it's figuring out in what way do I work best. And the key to that is honesty. Like you got to be honest, and you have to have sources of honesty. So for example, like another example, small example, because I like learning from like examples is like Michael Jackson, for example. His performance clearly like top notch, but he had so many different intentional things that he did, whether it was talking at a certain octave because he wants to like save his vocals. Even before he recorded the song, he would be in a room that was a certain temperature because that's just what he needed to get in his zone. Like knowing how to position himself to really get different. Like that was a
Mm-hmm.
thing that enabled him to be even more like, yeah. So for me, that comes in terms of what I do is I optimize for impact because that gives me energy
Mm.
and that helps me. So I optimize in what I'm doing for impact, which is not for everyone, I guess. But for me, it's like sometimes, for example, I've never tried to be the person who's just like sitting debating over whether I get a 90 in a class or a 93. Like I'm indifferent. Like it's like there's a point where it's like I'm solving for impact. So that extra, let's say, hour that I could spend writing up the perfect email, coming up with an argument for my teacher, whatever. Where a lot of people I've seen will do that, especially at schools like Penn. I'd rather
Yeah.
put that into, hey, an hour conversation I can have with a stranger that just dropped knowledge on me. Hey, an hour that I can spend doing this, or an hour I can spend, or an hour I can spend releasing my brain to even let that like the sponge like chill out a little bit so I can go and attack again. Because everybody needs to let it cool off. So it's like I solve for impact in what I'm doing and what is the most impactful way to do this, especially when I'm doing a thing. I also then will iterate on it. So when you start doing something, it will take hella long to do that thing. Like when I first started producing music, for example, it'll take hella long. But if you think critically about like how you're doing that process and ways that you could be optimizing that and solving that out, it'll start taking less and less time. Like for example, just coming in with a plan of how I do my production every time. I start here, do this, do this. Like that saves like 10 freaking years worth of decision fatigue. It's almost like Steve Jobs, like simplicity is the like greatest form of like sophistication, where it's like he's going and picking a simple outfit, a turtleneck, and this to minimize the amount of decision fatigue he has to deal with. So it's like just
Mm-hmm.
by solving for the impact. Like, does somebody really care whether your jeans are this shade of gray versus this shade of gray? But a lot of people, that's what they're. So you're losing energy in those little moments when you're not solving for impact. So for me, the answer to that question of how I balance the things I do is I solve for
Mm.
impact, and I also balance. That's the first element. Is I solve for what's going to get the most accomplished and what's going to be the most like what's going to translate the most. Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, if you're the smartest person on earth or you have the most of resource on earth and you can't communicate any of that, it doesn't matter. You couldn't make any of it translate to the real world. So look at what things are going to give me the most ability to translate is the first piece. The second piece is looking at the thing that we kind of talked about a little bit, where like a lot of people look at how they operate as a person as like one big muscle. But like the more I feel like you get to know yourself and how you operate, you start to be able to, it's
Mhm.
like learning anatomy. First, you look at your body and you're like, body is a person. When you're a kid, you draw a stick figure, it's all one thing. Then you start realizing, the head is different than something else. Then you start legs and arms and whatever. So the more you start to know yourself, the more you can break that down and it starts becoming, I have a bicep, I have chest, I have legs. Like even if we just look at legs and arms, hey, legs could be academic work. Okay, I'm gonna grind on legs. My legs are getting sore. The goal is not to just sit in the gym all day and hit legs. Once I do that for a day, next day I'm doing arms, which is like that's like my creative side. That's what I do with the music, whatever. So for a lot of people, it's like
Mm.
this man isn't taking a break, but like these bodybuilders, they're taking a break on legs and chest and whatever. It's just that while they're taking that break, they're making that break work for them. So it's like, it's a different type of approach to it. So I think those two, and that also goes back to the impact thing, but I think those two things have been a lot of what guided me to, to be able to balance the things that I was doing, like you were saying.
100%. So it sounds like, yeah, you're definitely prioritizing things, but you're working on your strengths. And then now when you need some rest, you're still also being productive in a way that people think you're spreading yourself thin, as I just thought, right? But now you broke that down on, wait, hold on a second. Niko might be resting, but he's resting and still putting in work elsewhere, right? And I think I absolutely love that, because you're also, again, like I mentioned, you're prioritizing things, but like you just said, you're playing on your strengths in a way that people don't necessarily. I couldn't even see that. Like, again, I just know you as super busy man, but you're focusing your energy on things that make sense to you, that you can prioritize. But again, when you're resting, you're still putting in this work. You're still putting this work. Don't realize it. I'm focusing this energy elsewhere, right? So, and this actually this just drew a random question on my mind in terms of how do you value things, right? Because I think for a lot of people, they think about time value, and I even think about in terms of like money, right? In terms of like, he's about to drop something.
I love that question.
You know what I'm saying? In terms of like, let's say the financial aspect. Again, you don't have to talk about this, however you want to answer this. But in terms of financial aspect, I know a lot of people think about, hey, if I can spend an hour doing X, but yet in that same hour I can make Y. Hold on a second. Why would I do this if I can make this over here and actually leverage my time and make more if I just spent, or like leverage that and outsource this kind of thing to make that money, if that makes any sense at all, right? If I'm going to try to design an app, it might take me X amount of time.
That's a great
point.
If
I leverage and outsource that, it might cost more money on the front end, but I save way more money that actually valued more of my time. Why not do that, right? That's kind of how I think about value in terms of money. But in terms of you, Niko, whether you want to talk about monetarily or in terms of effectiveness, how do you value things? What brings Niko value, and how do you?
He looked like he got a lot on his mind. He got a lot.
I know
that
was a long question.
That's a great question. I love that. I love that question, actually, because I think everybody, and I would challenge everybody to develop their own definition of value. I think that will bring a lot of fulfillment to people, especially when they have a sense of why they do what they do. The value of different things, what they contribute to your life, is going to be different. Like the value of talking to like your boy is going to be different than the value talking to like your significant other. The value of doing this. So like looking for understanding what types of value at any given time. Then when I look at the before going into the types and qualities of value, if I'm breaking down value and like trying to make it into like a framework, whatever, I would say the two main types of value that a lot of people get stuck on: direct value. And that's like a really huge form of value, but it's not the most powerful one. The most powerful form of value is indirect value. And a lot of people, even when they think they're doing indirect value, it's really only when indirect value is then made direct to them. And I think that becomes the thing that's really, really tricky. So for example, indirect value has to do more with like context. It's like, I think Einstein said this when he was like, if you rated a shark on it, so I'm going to change his words around to fit your question. If you evaluated a shark on its ability to climb trees, it would seem like an inferior species. Like if you catch that John in the water, the context is about to have you eaten alive, right? So like the valuation of that thing in the water, it becomes a threat. So I think that that's like what's super important thing to keep in mind of the difference between direct value. Direct value is like, hey, I give Yinka $5. Yinka now has $5. And a lot of what you talk about like investing your money, like saving your money, like you said, that exponential curve, that what fills the rest of that curve is all indirect value, because it's value that's essentially being thrown to the other end of the curve. Like somebody's giving it up now, and it's not like, oh, where, my lifestyle, I'm not driving a fancy car right now, I'm not like eating filet mignon right now, like what is indirect value. So and that's where a lot of the, as and as you all talk about, that's where a lot of value is generated. So how I look at that is like, for example, you brought up a great question, like outsourcing. That's something I had to think about when I started running my artist management entrepreneurship in high school. So I was thinking about, for example, I had a team of producers, audio engineers, artists, and each of them I had to come up with negotiations, deals, or whatever, and the money that I was going to spend, can like figure that piece out. So it's like exactly what you're saying. What is the value of me learning to do these things and doing it myself? Right. What is the value of me paying? And then how much should I pay and why? And even how can I manipulate? How can I manipulate my deal to where I get the most value for me? So the first answer was, time-wise, I look at the time that it would take me to learn said skill. Ridiculous, like the time value of having that quickly so I could get the project I was working on the time done. Not realistically it's not worth the opportunity cost of what that takes away from me functioning overall and overseeing the whole process. Not worth it. answered that question really simply. Okay, then it's like, how much do I pay them, right? Value. So then when you
Right.
also understand value and you understand other people's perception of value, you can create way more value for yourself. So an example, something very common to everybody, like Costco works off of bulk pricing. That's a very well-known fact, is that if I buy more of something, I get like, it would be so expensive to buy individual Skittles. Like, that's a very well-known fact, right? However, it's almost like people don't really understand how deep that goes. It was like I was doing deals with people in music and I was just using bulk pricing and I was getting crazy what I would call finesses, because it's like, but at the end of the day, you could argue that it was like also valuable for them, because the main trade-off is I'm giving them upfront money in exchange for guaranteed work. But let's say somebody hits me with because again, I did all the money I put into music was money I saved up myself to invest in my own business idea I had. But like, let's say somebody said, like, I'm going to mix your song, I'm going to edit your song for $300 a song or $100 a song to make it easy math.
Okay.
Right? If I were to, let's say I know my album that I'm working on two people's different projects, which together is going to be like 20 songs, 10 or 20 songs, right? Let's go with 20, right?
Okay.
That is going to run me $2,000 to get that done. So immediately, I say I don't have $2,000, and this is where constraint becomes beautiful, because if you always just have that, you won't challenge yourself to say, how can I? What am I missing about this? How can I reorganize the deal? Somebody gave me some pieces. How can I redistribute the pieces to make this work for me? So I say, okay, $2,000. Now you can look at that as saying, hey, I'm signing up to give you $2,000, or you can look at that as this is how much I'm paying per song. And when you break it down in the smaller sense, it's like the reverse of what you say, where people are willing to lose out on, like, you're giving people super valuable tips about, credit cards and, interest and, investing, super valuable tips. People are willing to lose out on that money because they don't see the value in 10%, let alone 3%, everything like that. So all you have to say is take the same psychology and flip it. All right, so look, for every song you were going to give me, let's say what? Like, you're going to make me pay $100, right? How about this? I'll guarantee you 20 songs of work, right? And you multiply this math out in your head beforehand, right? And you say, upfront money, $1,000 sounds way better than $100. So how about this? I'll give you 20 songs of work for $1,000 right now. Contract. And knowing how their workflow goes, that's not guaranteed. If I leave, I have also leverage there, because if I leave, it's not guaranteed somebody's going to come and keep giving them $100 for individual projects. Oh, this is a chance for me to hop on $1,000. I just got a 50% discount on all that work. And so when you leverage that same thing, it's like, yeah, it's no wonder like things work the way. So it's like the value that you're getting, and then you negotiate the deal, whatever. So I look at value in terms of like not just contextually, but like percentage wise. Then another scenario later on, I learned how to, as I kept going in music, it was upfront investments. Kind of like when companies enter a market, one of the common strategies that they'll use is they'll outsource a lot of things or pull in things,
right,
as they develop their own internal ways of doing it organically, right? So for me, I outsourced audio engineering, outsourced some of the production stuff that I did, outsourced a lot of different things that I did. And as the years went on, each year I had a new goal. First, production, master all the things so I can be able to do production and engineer my production by itself. Then audio engineering, I want to be able to do vocals. The second year around COVID hit, I want to be able to do audio engineering vocals. And that's where I'm investing in my skill set with time, because at the end of the day, when I bring that in-house, not only is the value, like, if you look at the money that I was saving, right, if I were to make the same amount of songs, it's not that much, right? Like, let's say I'm saving $1,000 a year. What does that matter? But then you look at the indirect value, right? And what opportunity did that open up that's not tied to money? That opened up the opportunity for me to churn out demo tracks at a rate that's not seen at all. Like, I can independently sit here and churn out 20. If you were to send me out, I could churn you out an album worth of songs in one weekend. And you can hear them in almost, like, I don't have to be the best, because you can hear them in pretty much next to like best quality. Like, it's not going to be the best, but enough for you to be able to tell what the product is you're getting. It's like, I may not be able to make a live action, but I can spin you a really good animation in a weekend, in a fraction of the time it would take, in a fraction of money and resources, easy. So I can flip in that. And so when I look at the indirect value, if you follow the value chain, why does that matter, right? Because at the end of the day, like the power law thing, like I was talking about before, when you're trying to have spread shot and you're trying to raise your volume up so you have a higher amount of hits. Like when you look at Juice WRLD, you look at Michael Jackson, they recorded the most songs. No wonder they have so many hits. Juice WRLD died. He had like more than 1,000 songs. So people aren't getting there. He was 1,000 reps up. Of course, if he hits with a 10% rate, he has 100 bangers. If he hits with a 1% hit rate, which is better than 1%, he's gonna have 10 crazy bangers. So it's like, okay, cool. What that allows you to do is you're never going to be able to get to that number if you're sitting there. Like the biggest factor or determining component of you getting to that number is that time that it takes you to understand, differentiate, is this a hit or if not? So by getting those reps up, like if I'm able to sit there and churn out a bunch of low res quality, like one of the sayings I like to say at my venture with my friends is the MVP is the MVP. In short, the most valuable player is the minimum viable product. MVP is the MVP. So if you spend forever etching the Mona Lisa, then you find out somebody didn't like it. Oh, that's gonna take you forever. If you can go ahead and find some way to give a mock-up digital before you go and do the paint of the Mona Lisa, somebody be like, yeah, I don't like that. Flip them another one. By the time somebody showed them the Mona Lisa and they didn't like it, you just flipped them 100 paintings and they definitely loved about 100 of them. So you have future work. Or they definitely love like 10. So now you have even more work. So it's like really quickly, I'm able to sit there and sift through a bunch of different things and be like, really quickly, I don't have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks of sending a song out, hearing what it sounds like back to be like, make or no. I can, in a weekend, boom, 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 boom. Like I just like edited 5 to 10 songs in literally like 3 days last week. And it's like, I can listen to those and be like, this one have potential, this didn't, this one did, this didn't, next direction. And that ability to climb that it's a race to climb that exponential curve, put the compound work in, and you're going at that curve faster. You're raising your interest rate up. You're going at that curve much faster. So I feel like that's how that indirect value chain, it trickles. So if you see like, so I guess value is tricky because at the end of the day, me learning how to outsource and saving $1,000, it wasn't just a game of like, oh, I'm saving $1,000. I guess the thing I'm trying to say is that you can also find opportunities to create value off of what the value already is set at.
Yeah, that nuance value that people don't really think about. They think about that quantifiable numeric value, but it's all that nuance value. Man, like there's so many layers to that. And I know we could just talk about, because man, that was deep. I kid you not. Like there's a lot of people I talked about. Just how I started, I prefaced with the numerical value. But when you start to think about that nuance value that's not even thought about, that's where that true indirect value really comes into play. So I think I like how you started with that, because again, I didn't even start with that. That made a ton of sense. And I appreciate that.
Right. Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Say one, because I kind of dislike that I gave an answer that was like not tangible, because I appreciate like both. I appreciate the philosophy or how somebody's thinking, but sometimes I watch stuff and I'm like, how does this apply to me? I guess the best answer to answer it in a more tangible way really quickly.
Okay.
I didn't just know automatically the effect of all this stuff out the womb or something. It didn't just come to me or something like that. I think if you really want to create value for people, or define value, or understand value, or find value, I guess, like create and find value, I think one of the best ways is to be genuinely in your heart trying to affect the game. Like, and I told this to my little brother. I was like, when I played basketball, I ended up being able to earn a spot on the court, earn a spot on a national championship team, because I was so focused and so bent and passionate and dedicated to finding a way to affect the game. So I may not be the best shooter, but can I dive on the floor first? Can I be the person who's able to get the most charges? Can I be the person who gets 20 rebounds in a game, which I did? Can I guard the guys that nobody wants to guard? I'm so bent on finding how can I affect the game versus being like a second best or like a third best shooter. You're not affecting the game. So that's like, I feel like where the value is in a mindset and a way to make it a framework or like a habit. It's looking for ways to what's going to impact the game. And the craziest thing about this is that I've learned from lived experience now that if you look first for ways to affect the game will then shape to adapt and accommodate you. If you look to so for example, if you go out to play, if they say we run this play and we throw the ball to this kid so we can shoot, and let's say you got a mismatch on you, a guy who cannot guard you, and you take him to the rim, dunk on his ass, right? You take him to the rim and dunk on this dude. At the end of the day, when you keep doing that and affecting the game, guess what? The coach is going to change the play. So that is now the play. That is now the game that y'all play.
Right. Yeah.
If you affect the game, like if you're out here, if you are like, for facts,
that's real.
If you're out here trying to be the perfect student in order to impress people and do this and do whatever and this, that, the other, cool. and let's say that's going to get you admission into, let's say like you want to get into an MBA program or something like that, or some crazy thing like that. And you're out here trying to be like the perfect this, that, the other, and be like, I'm trying to be the safest pick, right?
Right.
Yeah, you can go in the bin with the rest of the safe pick people, but like
But
there's a
affecting the
kid.
game. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a kid who's out here affecting the game so much, whether it's because he started a company, was bold, he followed his passion and got crazy insight from it. He was like whatever. He was affecting the game, and those people that somebody was trying to impress, they went and sought that person out because of the way he affected the game.
Yeah.
Like the dude who created like the like button for Facebook and all that other stuff, who he also started like, I don't know how to pronounce it, Asana or whatever. Like those companies sought this dude out because of how he was affecting the game. They were like, we need him. We need to go get him. We're not trying to have you go through a recruiting process. We need you to come to us because of how you're affecting the game. The game will mold around you if you learn how to affect the game.
Man, oh, Niko, first off, number one,
that
I
was
appreciate
that.
That was gas, man. I appreciate how you, and again, I understand you with your philosophical teachings, but then when you actually, like, there's a lot of listeners out there that don't really know you like you, Tyrone, and I do. But in terms of that tangible affect the game philosophy, not even philosophy, that actual tangible way to make change, define value, and provide value. Again, going back to that nuance, just something, it can be something minor as well. And if it does that kind of big impact and affects the game, now you're known. It's those kind of unique things that set you apart for real, juxtaposed to, like you said, being that perfect kind of, finding within the lines, or, checking out that rubric, that cookie, exactly, that cookie cutter. If you're making even that little change, as long as it does that ripple, because something that came in my head, and I know you're more into basketball than I am, Niko, but something like what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the what's that kind of shot he does over here? What's that called? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, is he the one who and then you can correct me on this, is he the one who started that? Did he affect the game in that way? Or he's the one who maybe even like perfected that, the skyhook?
Right. Yeah.
Right. He affected the basketball game and kind of, pulling off those 3-pointer shots in the corner instead of going like this. Now you can start shooting him like this. Like, probably nobody thought about that, or nobody perfected like him. He affected the game in that kind of way. That's kind of what came into my mind. And again, I might have butchered that because you're more into basketball like me. And I'm looking at your face, like, hold on, Niko, you don't know what you're talking about. But as a whole, what I'm saying is again, probably there's so many other people who could be named, did one small thing, either perfected it or changed in a way that not the cookie cutter average person is doing it, that affected the whole game. And I love that example with the like button, because again, that one little thing changed the whole way people view social media nowadays.
Right.
Oh, I love that. I appreciate that, man. So I want to pivot now to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're
I was
good.
about to say, it seemed like you were thinking on something. I was curious to hear, because I was curious to hear what you were in the middle. It seemed like you were agreeing with something.
No, I was just agreeing with what you're saying. I thought everything it made sense.
It changed the game. I had to take note on that. I'm like, that's gas. I love that. I appreciate that, Nick. So yeah. So the one thing I want to pivot to, and kind of the last two questions in my mind here, in terms of actually, I'll actually just go with one of them. I know you being the kind of guy who works low key, right? Again, I remember, and I love telling this story in the sense that, like, at Boston Scientific, like, again, you're doing so many things at once, but you act like not necessarily the cookie cutter, but you act average. You play naivete when you're really, again, you're playing chess, you're playing backgammon, but you act like you're playing checkers. So again, that's a whole nother level of awareness of, okay, I want to play a role, not in a negative way, but I want to play a role to be perceived a certain way. So people don't think that I'm actually like, I'm sneaking up behind them, and again, in a good, not negative way, right? So in terms of being low key, can you talk about how maybe in the future, how do you want to navigate? Because again, success, it's inevitable for Niko. We already know that it's inevitable, right? How would you navigate success? Are you going to be more of a low key kind of guy? Are you going to be more of a flashy guy? How do you navigate success and just being that guy who's like, hold on, I know what's going on here, but I'm going to act like I don't?
Right. So I think there's two elements to this. One is like that piece, what you're saying, like the flashiness, and the other one is visibility. So, like, for example, Obama's not really flashy, but like he's very visible. So, like, for me, I don't know if I want to be, I can't answer the visibility question because I don't know if I want to be, I just know that I want to live my life. One of my life goal is to be able to empower other people as people have empowered me. And so I think a lot of times that's done through messaging. And a lot of times visibility is how we get messaging. It's like being able to see Obama, being able to see LeBron, but that just comes with a lot of headaches. Like for example, they went down to Obama's birth certificate to try to come up with something wrong with him. Like a LeBron, if he passes too much in the game, they say, oh, he doesn't know how to dominate. If he score and they win, if he passes a lot and they win, he doesn't know how to dominate. if he dominates and they win, they'll say, oh, he doesn't know how to get his teammates involved. He doesn't make his teammates better. So it's like those type of people, you at the cost of like you can't
Yeah.
win. The press is on you, especially if you're trying to do something productive. You can have all the negativity in the world, but don't try to do something productive because people will really not like that. So it's like, but the trade-off, I feel like the opportunity to like give a different message, especially to like people who otherwise, if I stay in like siloed communities, I feel like the people who would have needed that message, like for me, for example, like growing up, I didn't see people who were really like doing like engineering that were black people like that. Like I'm not really interacting with that many black, like, and I'm sure you all can relate to that. I'm not really interacting with a bunch of black engineers who are like, hey, this is how to become a black engineer. Like all the textbooks we open when they're doing science in the textbooks, it's white people and white men. So it's like, I feel like, that's a super valuable contribution to have. But aside from that, I haven't decided how I feel about that. I guess it'll come with my purpose. If I follow my purpose, what's supposed to happen will happen. But
I think
as
there's a
far as,
lot of self-reliance that comes with that as well. Just having that confidence that, hey, this may not be the environment for me, but I know what I got cooking up underneath is going to show when the time is right. And following that passion, when you have that, and that'll be able to show and come out when the time comes. I think there's a lot of self-reliance with that, because you do see a lot of kind of like that flashy lifestyle on social media today and wanting to be visible, but there's a lot of value and a lot of security knowing that I can be confident in without having to do all that extra. You know what I'm saying? So that self-reliance, I think, comes very much with that.
Yeah.
Right. So visibility wise, that's my answer. Flashy wise, honestly, my number one goal in life, if I could have, as it stands right now, I would want to be the guy who's sitting in a room worth $1 billion. That doesn't mean I have to be hoarding it. I would like to put money to good use, but worth $1 billion and wearing the same New Balance as I wear today, or whatever shoe it is. Wearing the same, rotate, keeping it real simple. I like to be a dude who's moving on a bill that doesn't even look like it. They'll be like, "What? Like, what's up with this?" I'm completely fine with that. I love it, honestly, because a lot of that, especially as being in the like working around a lot of like rap and like hip hop artists, it's like the complete opposite. It's like people will be flexing money online, and when you ask them to pay you for a beat, they're like, "Oh, can I get a free beat?" It's like it's $25. Whose money is that you're holding up? So it's like that. It's just like I don't need that. I actually have no, I don't buy into that hype. As far as the other point, as far as like knowing, like you were saying, the knowledge piece, right? I think it's kind of like a card game. It's really like a card game. You got to know your hand, and knowledge is powerful. It's not just power, but it's powerful. So just like it can be like it can empower you, it can also be the same thing that entraps you, right? So like for example, and part of the reason like going and wanting to affect the game, part of the reason some people don't affect the game if you analyze their performance, is because that's not really what that's because they want to, I guess. It's because they want to affect the game, like, but they don't need to do it. Like they want to do a lot of things, and a lot of conversations are want. So you'll hear people all the time be like, I want to be your best friend, Yinka, but I can't, blah blah whatever. I want a lot of things I want. It's like, and at the end of the day, you could want like somebody who's like beating you up every day after school could want to be nice to you 1%. That means it's still true they want to be nice to you, but it's not enough to translate. You see what I'm saying? So one is nice, but it's never really going to get stuff done. So they could want to look better more than they could want to look cool more than they want to win, which is often the case. They could want to feel comfortable more than they want to win. They could want to feel like they're doing the right thing more than they are affecting the game. They could want to, like all these other things. But the thing about me when I play, like, and a lot of like the way I feel about affecting the game, having that at the core of what I do, that's like it's not a want to have, it's a need to have for me. So I think that changes. It's like when you have the need to have that you want, like need to have is like my health, my family, like stuff like that, like having impact in what I do. When you have need to have, all bets are off. The game is real simple. And I think the best way to describe this is like you could say a skyhook, or you could also say like how does somebody get to innovating stuff like that? If you just go out in the court and you are like, hey, I just want a fancy shot or whatever, you're not going to get to that if you want to have it. You only get to those breakthrough innovations by needing to have that thing. And the best example is like nature. Like if you put a rat inside a box, right? Like those, like if rats don't chew through stuff, like they don't gnaw, their teeth can grow into their brains and they can die, right? So they gnaw away at things because they need to. It's not just a want, it's like a physical need. You can fact check this one, but I'm pretty sure it's a physical need, right? So it's like, let's say you put them in front of like a brick wall, whatever. Okay, cool. They can't go under the ground. They're going to start chewing through the brick because they need to. They're gonna start clawing at this. They're gonna go through the glass because they need to, and that's where that innovation comes in. That they're gonna find a way to break through that wall because they need it. They need it. And so for me, right, when you ask about, like you said, like I think of a lot more things than like how I'm talking right now. Like I don't know how many people I know will watch this, but this tends to be different than how I'll just act on a typical basis and whatever for reasons of efficiency and also reasons of people won't care about some of this stuff and everybody has a different life philosophy, but also for reasons of, this is how it goes. Part of the game is some people want to be wolves because they want to be seen and feared and be sexy, whatever. They want to be, and not specifically they want to be wolves. They want to be seen as wolves. In the inside, are they a wolf or not? I don't know. They could be a sheep. I don't really care to find out. I'll let them do them. But at the end of the day, right? End of the day, I'd much rather get in the hen house. I'd much rather get in the hen house. If I'm a wolf, I'd much rather get in the hen house. Because at the end of the day, you can do all the flashing and be big bad whatever, but they're going to prepare. They're going to tighten up the walls. They're going whatever. I'd much rather get in the hen house because that's open. Once you get in the hen house, you're good.
Open season.
It's open season. You go crazy. You do what you need to do. You don't have anybody deterring your mood. You don't have anybody trying to think, oh, well, the wolf is always eating. How come he gets to eat more than the other animals in the food chain? Oh, blah, blah, whatever, this, that, the other. You want to be unbothered walking through that door. You want to be unbothered so you can focus on what you need to do, which is get through that door.
Yeah. That's real. And man, I appreciated that analogy, man. And again, I know Tyrone and I are like, golly, just gem after gem after gem. This is bejeweled out here, my guy. Man, I appreciate you. That makes so much sense. And again, just knowing the kind of guy that you are, like you can play that part so well. But then again, forget even backgammon, my guy. You're playing mahjong. Like just knowing just knowing the kind of guy Niko is, like he's just thinking so many plays ahead. But he's like, I'm even keeled. People don't need to know this, right? Again, not only will it be above their scope, right? But again, it's like they don't need to know this. They don't need to know this. Not making plays that just are completely irrelevant to them, but I can act like I'm just like them, right? And I absolutely love that because I think for a lot of people, and this is exactly why I respect, even just like the Bill Gates photo. I don't know if you guys ever saw that Bill Gates photo where he's standing outside. I think it's like a fast food chain restaurant, whatever. And someone snapped a picture of him, right? And he's just dressed in like just a nice, just chill quarter zip, nice pants. You wouldn't even know it's Bill Gates unless you know. If you know, you know. But like, he doesn't need that flash. Again, Bill Gates is that kind of guy. Well, he doesn't need that flash, but he's got it like that. And I love how you talked about you'll be that exact same kind of guy with your New Balances. Because I remember you at Boston Scientific, you were that same kind of guy with the New Balances, and you're still making plays, man. Going back to those days. So, Niko, man, I appreciate you. And to kind of wrap up the podcast, I want to ask you 3 again, really easy, just quick fire questions. Just kind of, end up on a really good note. Because again, this it's already, we're up here. I want to make sure we ground ourselves so everybody be like,
quick question.
At the end of the podcast. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this gonna shut in the middle of your questions? Is it gonna
no, sir.
freeze? Because it says 5 minutes, John.
No, we're good. We're still rolling, my guy. We got gas to continue going on. 100%.
Okay. Okay, cool. Because it gave me a warning. Oh, one more thing I want to say.
Yeah, please.
One more thing I want to say. This is more of like my way of saying thank you for bringing me on here and why I would even be on here in the first place, like Tyrone, Yinka, everything like that. On the conversation of the wolves, right? Like I think of it, another way to think of it is like bullets, right? Okay. If you're in a Wild West, you can tell somebody you got bullets in your gun. Maybe you have 2, maybe you have 3. But if you only have 5 bullets, you only have 4 bullets, whatever, why would you tell anybody you have 4 bullets? So at the end of the day, why would you tell anybody you have 4 bullets? You have 3, they hear boom, boom, boom. Oh, he's out of bullets. We all know this man has 4 bullets. Or we all know this man has 3 bullets and you keep the 4th to yourself. That's when they come out and you go ahead and, but why would you tell somebody you have 4 bullets? Why would you share these intimate things about yourself, the things that are your strengths, the things that are whatever, is when it's going to be useful to you. And when that is the truest is when you meet people like Tyrone, when you meet people like Yinka, those people who are on you, who are grinding for you, who are writing for you, they're going to hear you have 4 bullets. And when you're in a shootout, they're going to be like 1, 2, 3. He only got 1 bullet left. Let me go ahead and those are the people who are going to use that knowledge to try to elevate your stance. That's the only time that it really, for me, it really makes sense to bring that out.
Good.
Is when you're around people that are trying to elevate, they're going to elevate. Yinka hears, if I'm in the Wild West and Yinka hears, he just uses 3rd bullet. Yinka's writing. Yinka's like, 100%. Yo, let me toss you a bullet real fast.
That's real. That's real.
So I feel like that's just a big thank you. The type of guys you all are and the energy and what you all are trying to build, I really respect it.
I appreciate you. And
He did not miss.
Go ahead, Tyrone. He did not. He did not. And that right there, that's why I want to wrap that section up right there on 3. 1, 2, 3. Relationship equity. Oh, got you. That's
Absolutely.
real. No, that's
Absolutely.
real.
I got that from my dad. I
got
gotta cite him, by the way. I got that from my dad. I gotta cite him.
Gotta trademark, copyright that, John. I love that relationship equity. I appreciate that, Niko. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate you, Niko.
Of course.
But yes, pivoting to these last 3 questions again, super easy. The first question is, again, this is a financial literacy podcast. For a lot of people, they love being put on to the gems, the knowledge, right? So we're gonna put them on with another gem that you're about to suggest. What is one, financial literacy book, or even you can talk about mindset, motivation, what have you, that's more in the self-development space, right? Because that's something you even said you want to work on in 2023, which is super awesome. What is one book that you've read that you would definitely recommend to one of our listeners or to all of our listeners? What is one book like, oh, you have to read this?
I already was gonna say your classic, but I already know somebody said that. So
yeah. Which is referring to Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like that said, I'm gonna pick.
It doesn't have to be a finance book.
Right. So restate a book that people should read.
Yeah, self-development book that would be like, hey, if you're gonna read a book, you have to read this one.
Okay, I would say off the rip. See, I'm trying to justify. No, I'm trying to justify the book that I'm currently reading. It's not really a self-development book. I'm maybe biased because of recency bias, but it's a book I feel like it empowers you and informs you on how the world is working, so you can navigate.
Ooh, let's talk about it.
Navigate that.
What book is that?
It's called Winners Take All, and it kind of talks about this idea of the market world and how that is a big part of how people are looking at creating change, and it aligns with what I was saying about impact. And so I just feel like that's been a really awesome read for me. If I had to think of something that was more oriented, I feel like I really want to pick that one because it talks about a lot of it talks about a lot of really cool stuff as far as how people portray people major companies doing philanthropic stuff versus what's actually the reality of what's going on. And I think just preparing I feel like knowledge is freedom in that way. Knowing certain things helps you navigate. And I feel like that is a type of personal development that I seek as well. It's not just one thing the meditation and whatever and this, that, the other, but also equipping yourself with information and ideas, whether you agree with them or not, that kind of expands your viewpoint and protect you from the different the mechanisms that are already at play. So I feel like that's why I picked that one. I really like it though so far.
And I love that because again, we talked about this a little bit previously, but that again, it's giving you more knowledge that the average person won't have. So again, you can be maneuvering like a hen, but thinking like a wolf.
Right.
100%. Again, I love that. Hey, Tyron was like, oh my God. No, I love that. You said winners take all.
Right.
Winners take all. Hopefully, listeners, you guys got that.
Putting that on my notes.
Wish list. You know what I'm saying? Man, I appreciate that, Niko. In terms of the second question, 2022 comes up to a wrap. I think, less than a week or less than 10-ish days or something like that, which is crazy to think about. This year has gone by like this. What is one goal you want to execute either by the end of the year? So again, less than 10-ish some days. Or what is one goal that you're looking forward to embark on in 2023?
For me, one of the best pieces of advice my mom gives me is that everybody's strength is tied to their weakness. So if you ever want to find the two, there's a relationship between all of them. Yeah. So for me, a lot of what I've been learning by talking to mentors and things like that, which I'd highly recommend for anybody who doesn't really think of that, definitely a lot of the stuff that I've learned and stuff that I'm sharing that I believe in and has made me successful. It's not stuff I created. It's stuff that people have shared with me who I respect. But for me, that it's the feedback I've gotten is it comes down to learning things, similar to what I said about the teacher, learning things genuinely to understanding the nature of how something works. Learning how something works is a thing that has become my strength to understand the nature of the thing. And so with that, I actually recently was just thinking about, how are the ways that is also a weakness for me that I need to monitor. And the way that I used to think it was like you said, doing too much becomes also doing too much. And as we keep continuing life, like I said about the Michael Jackson thing, we refine out how well we understand, like, oh, my bicep is it's not just arm, it's forearm, it's bicep, it's whatever. So as I continue to refine that, I had a realization today that I think it's also, I was just walking by Law and Order and on the TV, there was Law and Order was playing. I was in a deep thought process, and I remember like Olivia was saying something. I was like, I kind of want to know what she's saying, and that's where I was like, I don't know why in that moment it clicked for me, but an even better way to describe it is monitoring my curiosity. And I think that it's important because with information, it's like knowledge is power, but there's also a point that we can be swimming in data and get lost in the sauce if we're trying to like quote unquote boil the ocean. Like the saying where it's like you can take a cup of water and boil it, or you can try to boil the ocean. Like if you have too much white noise going on, it's not good for anything. You're overly split up, like whatever your attention is, that, the other. And so for me, like that dedication to like learning and figuring out and curiosity to pick apart the nature of a thing, there's times where I need to be monitoring consciously, making sure I'm turning that off. Like for example, seeing Olivia, like naturally I'll be like, oh, I'm curious to know what's going to happen next, or try to predict it, or already, and like being very cognizant of myself about like, hey, let me turn off my curiosity here. It's okay to wonder things. Like that's not something I need to learn. Like I can let that roll off. And being very, very intentional about like every day people are going to say stuff, or like I'm going to see stuff. And like same thing with Instagram, right? Like it's going to play to your curiosity and be like, hey, aren't you curious what's on the next thing? Which that's not as much of a point of contention for me because I can just turn my phone off. But like with everyday sound stuff going on, whatever, really being able to say like not everything, and that turns people too, like people inviting you to certain things. You're like not every understanding, being more intentional with my curiosity, I guess. So that's my goal.
Yeah. And that's real. Again, just knowing Niko, like again, when we met at Boston Scientific, you're very knowledgeable on a lot of things. You can talk in depth. I'm like, it's rare. I say there's probably like a good 5 people who very much vibrate at your kind of level, or vibrate on that kind of, I should say, right? And it's very interesting because again, you can talk at length with something, but that strength could be tied to a weakness, as you mentioned. I love that you said that, right? I absolutely love that you said that. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting, and I want to recap on that later in the 2023, kind of see how you went to navigate that, because I think that's just something that's so innate. That's something that's so innate in you that hopefully it doesn't like limit you, or it completely deconstructs who Niko is, but that's something that you're able to actually now use to even a greater strength. Like, hey, you know what? I don't need to put into this area all this kind of time. I want to be more effective, more purposeful, and more intent. Have more intent with where I'm putting that kind of time. I love that. That's actually really good. Knowing you, I think that's really good. I appreciate that, Niko. Man, that's gonna be awesome to hear how you navigate that 2022. And in terms of the last question, and again, easiest one of all. Again, I know there's so many of our listeners who resonated with this conversation with you today, my guy. How can they connect with you? Whether it's social media, whether it's business, how can our listeners connect with you?
Oh, for sure. So people can connect with me. I'm probably not gonna give my PIN email because that's gonna expire soon. So I'm gonna just use I'm gonna use LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn or LinkedIn, social media, whatever. Niko Simpkins, so Niko Simpkins, and that's how they connect with me.
Awesome. I love it. No, I thank you, Niko. Again, oh man, just the amount of gems. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Bejeweled app. Like people can play this Bejeweled game.
One more thing. If people reach out to me based off of this podcast, drop FLI. Like make sure you mention FLI, or I may not read it because I'm gonna think you're spam or something. So make sure you say like, oh, I'm one of Yinka's boy. Like Yinka is the gang. Like, FLI. Make sure you shout out or hashtag FLI or whatever. So I can make sure, like I'm like, oh, this is good people.
Gotcha. No, that's good. Listeners, if you guys made it this far, make sure to tag where you're from, be it FLI, so people know, or Niko knows where you came from. You're not just a spammer, because Niko, he gets too many people in his inbox. This guy's moving different.
Busy dude. He's gonna be
hard
to reach.
Gotta differentiate yourself. So again, Niko, man's moving different with a PH. So again, we appreciate you. Tyron, do you have any last remarks, my boy Niko?
Niko, this is a great session today. It's good to see you doing well. We'll definitely have to catch up outside of these hours, man. You sound like you're doing good for yourself. And just kind of what you said, similar about, seeing Black engineers, what I'm saying? I kind of get that same effect, just us being in this space together, man. Feels good, keeps me motivated, keeps me positive. Let me know that, surrounding myself with like-minded individuals. And I'm glad to be able to contribute and hear you talk, man. So it's good. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. Always good to see you. Always good to see you.
Man, we appreciate you. Quick question too, that just popped in my head. Are you, by chance, Are you going to the NESB conference in, I think, early March or late March or something this upcoming year?
Possibly.
Okay,
Possibly.
man,
If so,
we
we'll
would
have
love
the
to see
link.
you physically.
If so,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
have the link.
100%. Let us know, because Tyron and I will be there 100%.
Oh,
But
for
again,
sure.
all things aside, Niko, we appreciate you. I know you're a busy man where your time is truly valuable. So we appreciate your time this evening tonight. So again, for all of our listeners, this was On the Fly, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Again, we appreciate you. We do all this for you. We want to drop gems for you because really all these gems, we wish that we had this, earlier on in our lives. So we just want to pay it forward and, kind of provide that kind of value. So we appreciate you. And this is why we bring amazing guests on our podcast, just like Niko Simpkins, have just equally as amazing, co-hosts as well as Tyrone Johnson. So again, we appreciate you all. And again, one more time, this was On the Fly Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Thank you.